Something pressed back when I touched my own eye socket. That's what I keep coming back to. Not the scan, not the phone call, not the 4 days that disappeared from my medical records. The moment I pressed my fingers against the right side of my face and felt a response from the inside. Deliberate, specific. The sensation of something that knew I was there. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start where it started. 6 weeks of pressure behind my right eye. Not pain, pressure. The specific sensation of something pushing outward from the inside. Always arriving at 3 a.m., always the same side, always gone by morning as though it had accomplished whatever it came to do. My GP said tension, my optometrist said screen time. I said it felt like something was trying to get out, and they wrote that down in the way doctors write things down when they've already decided you're anxious. The MRI was routine, 40 minutes, contrast dye at minute 20, the usual sounds. Then a waiting room, then my name, then a room I hadn't been in before with 2 people I hadn't met before, and a screen showing a shape I didn't immediately understand. Small, dense, positioned exactly behind my right eye at a depth the radiologist measured twice before saying the number out loud. When did you have surgery in this area? Never. I have never had surgery of any kind. She measured it a 3rd time. Then she used the word manufactured and stopped herself and said regular instead, but I had already heard the first word and I couldn't unhear it. She left the room to make a phone call. I sat alone looking at the image of my own skull and the thing sitting inside it, and I noticed for the first time that the headaches had stopped completely the moment they injected the contrast dye. Whatever is behind my eye knew the dye was coming. I don't know how else to explain it.
They admitted me that night. Not suggested, admitted. The language of something that is not optional, delivered in the calm tone hospitals use when they need cooperation without explanation. A room was ready. My belongings could be collected by a family member. Someone would explain everything in the morning. Nobody explained anything in the morning. A neurologist came, an ophthalmologist, a man who introduced himself only by his first name and didn't specify what he did. They looked at the imaging together in the hallway and spoke too quietly to hear, and twice the man with no last name glanced through the window at me in a way that felt less like medical concern and more like verification, checking that I was still there, still contained, still unaware of something he already knew. On the second night, I pressed my fingers gently against my right eye socket. Something pressed back. Not pain, not movement. Pressure. Deliberate, specific. The sensation of something acknowledging the contact from the inside. I pulled my hand away and it stopped. I pressed again. It responded again. I did this 4 times before I made myself stop because I was afraid of what would happen if I kept going. My phone lit up at 2:47 a.m. Unknown number. I answered. Silence. Then a sound. Regular, rhythmic, slightly wet. It took me 11 seconds to understand what I was hearing. A heartbeat. Not mine. Slower. Steadier. The sound of something that had been running without interruption for a long time and had no intention of stopping. The call lasted 43 seconds. Then it ended. The pressure behind my eye returned immediately, heavier than before, as though the call had been a message and the message had been received. The man with no last name came to see me that evening. He sat down without being invited and looked at me for a moment and said, "We know what it is. We just don't know how long it's been there." He showed me a second scan, older imaging pulled from a database he didn't name, matched to my records by a process he didn't explain. The shape was in that scan too. I asked when it was taken. He said the scan predated any MRI I had ever had on record. I asked what that meant. He didn't answer. He shook my hand and told me someone would follow up and left, and I sat with the image of my own skull from a scan I never had, showing a thing that has apparently been inside me longer than anyone can account for, and I pressed my fingers against my eye socket one more time. It pressed back harder than before. She left the room to make a phone call. I sat alone looking at the image of my own skull and the thing sitting in it, and I noticed for the first time that the headaches had stopped completely the moment they injected the contrast dye. Whatever is behind my eye knew the dye was coming. I don't know how else to explain it.
I've been home for 6 days, discharged with a folder of paperwork that explained nothing, a follow-up appointment in 3 weeks, and a number to call if I experienced unusual symptoms. The man with no last name shook my hand at the door and looked at a point slightly behind my face when he said goodbye, not at me, past me, as though addressing something I couldn't see. The headaches haven't returned. I want to be precise about this. 6 weeks of pressure that woke me every night at 3 a.m. and it stopped the moment the contrast dye entered my bloodstream and has not come back once. My vision is unchanged. My balance is unchanged. By every measurable standard, I am healthier now than before the MRI. That is the most frightening thing I know how to write. I've been looking at this shape in my scans for 6 days. Last night, I noticed something I hadn't noticed before. It has moved. A fraction of a millimeter, the kind of shift you'd dismiss as imaging variance if you hadn't been staring at the same image for nearly a week. It's closer to the surface than it was. I called the number they gave me this morning. Disconnected. I called the hospital directly. No record of the man with no last name. No record of my admission under the department he mentioned. My file shows an outpatient MRI and a routine follow-up. 4 days of admission. No record. I contacted 3 people who had posted in forums about similar experiences. The pressure that responds to touch, the sounds that arrive through channels that aren't ears, the calls. 2 accounts had been deleted. The third responded in 4 words. Stop looking, they'll know. I didn't ask who they were. I already knew the answer. It had been behind my eye for longer than I'd been asking questions. The pressure tonight is different. Not painful, directional. The sensation of something that has been patient for a very long time and has decided that patience is no longer necessary. I need you to understand something before you close this. If you've had pressure behind one eye, not pain, pressure, always the same side, always worse at 3 a.m., don't get the MRI. Not because of what they'll find, because the moment the contrast dye hits your blood, whatever is behind your eye will know it's been found, and it will start moving.